There's quite a lot of stuff that Black Myth Wukong just kinda lets you discover on your own, and on a first time playthrough you might make a lot of mistakes, like how I did even after playing for over 80 hours. And that's why today I'm going to show you some of the biggest mistakes you should avoid, as well as some extra tips to make your journey that much easier. At number 1, take full advantage of the wisps and especially the blue spirits to fully replenish your HP and mana without having to visit a seeker shrine as often. Especially the blue wisps left behind from defeating bosses will always replenish your healing flask to 100% when you absorb them. So this means you can use them to your own advantage, so before you start absorbing them, first make absolutely sure you consume your remaining charges to replenish your HP to 100% or as close to that as possible. Now if you also have a turtle tier soak into your drink, you will then start replenishing your mana as well if you still drink while already being at full health. And then you can go ahead and freely absorb that blue spirit, fully replenish your entire flask, and from this point on you can continue that way. But basically this was one of the main ways I was pushing through the later stages without having to constantly rest at a nearby shrine or having to worry about getting ambushed by a bunch of enemies. Moving on to number 2, a big mistake you might be doing is going for a spirit just because it looks cool without paying attention to the equip effects of it, because a lot of them actually have some really big debuffs for very little benefit. And there are some egregious examples over here, like for example the Mad Tiger, which is a secret boss in chapter 2, which is actually a very strong one when you fight it, is a very mediocre sort of skill slash spirit to pull off, which gives you a massive minus 75 debuff to your HP. And that is a flat number, by the way. So for example, in the early stages when you only have about 200 to 300 HP, that's basically a third of your HP being gone for just a slight bit of extra damage and a very mediocre ability. And there are others similar to it that are also early on. Like for example, there's this Dragonfly Guai, which basically debuffs all of your main stats. So this includes both, your HP, your stamina, as well as the mana, which you don't really want because, the slight benefit to increasing that chi generation is definitely not worth it. And there are other options in there, of course. Just pay absolute attention to what you're actually getting yourself into. That's why I really like the Wandering White early on. It gives you a flat 30 into your defense, which is actually really high at that stage. It's going to diminish until later on, but it's going to be very useful. Plus the headbutt mechanic is super strong. There are other examples that come with little to no downsides and mostly just buffs, like the Gore Eye Taoist, also in chapter 2, gives you a bit of extra mana, which can be helpful if you find yourself casting a lot. Another one is going to be that Tiger Acolyte, which gives you another 6% to your critical chance, which can be quite helpful in terms of extra damage, but there are plenty more in there. And absolutely pay attention to the fact that when you upgrade them, you also gain extra benefits. So you can reduce both the chi, also increase the damage, but also affect some of these stats right here by improving them further. Which brings us to number 3, which is the fact that frost effects are absolutely OP in this game, especially if you can proc that or just cause a build up on the target. It's literally like having a second immobilize, keeping a target stunned for maybe even more seconds than immobilize, especially later stage bosses. Many of them were made much easier because I had frost effects with some of my spirit summons. So there are quite a few very strong examples from early on, like especially chapter 3 has already a couple of them. One is the Crow Diviner, which just leaves behind one of these frozen fields of frosty fog. This causes a build-up really quickly and just immobilizes all targets in it. And it's also a rather easy acquire because you just need to head over right here into the Forest of Felicity and then just head over down the slope to the right side of the Site of Grace, and you're going to find the enemy that can be spawned that way pretty much in one of these lakes. There's also a second one, which is this Frozen Bat. That's actually a boss that you first fight at the north shore of the Bitter Lake. You just need to follow the shoreline right here, basically all the way at the end of these skeletons, and then you're going to find it right here. Fighting it is going to unlock it, and this is also one of the highest damage dealing spirits that I was able to use in the game. All in all, absolutely worth it. You should always have some of these frost effects, especially against fire enemies. At number 4, many of the passive stats in the survival skill tree are massive traps, especially early on, because they give very minimal incremental benefits for a huge amount of sparks that you should probably be using at that stage. That is why I recommended before to use these as you get closer to level 100. So there are a few that may be worth it, like for example the health upgrade gives you 60 HP for just 6 levels or 6 sparks. But there are some pretty bad examples over here, like for example the mana one will require 12 points or the equivalent of leveling 12 times for basically just 60 extra mana, which is not going to be that helpful. Maybe you're going to squeeze in just one extra cast. Also, if you want some extra defenses, there are better options than the rough skin. So rough skin costs 12 levels or 12 sparks for 60 extra defense, which would translate to about 20% extra defense. However, at just half of that cost, you can go with the Steadfast instead, which is going to give you 45 or 15% in this case extra defense at half of that cost of only 6 sparks. That's why at number 5, the next tip is to make difficulty a little bit easier by increasing your stats. And the best way to do so is to just hunt for these mind cores. Basically, with this, you can now craft celestial medicine. So there are a couple of early spots that you can use to semi-decently farm for them and get a bunch of them. One of them is going to be in the Fright Cliff at the Rockrest Flat Site of Grace. So there are 3 of these horse fighting enemies that you can go ahead and defeat, as well as a bunch of these rock guais. So they have a pretty decent chance at dropping mind cores. I would say 1 in 10 or 1 in 15. So every like 3 rounds, give or take, you should see at least one of these mind cores dropping. So what you can do with them, especially if you finish the Shoe Dog side quest, as I covered it before, you can go ahead at him and also pretty much convert these into any of these celestial medicines. I recommend starting with the maximum HP, get a bunch of that so that if anything goes horribly wrong in any boss fight, you have a bit of a fallback and have a bit more HP to regenerate, especially since many of the flasks will actually regenerate percentage based rather than flat numbers. Also, another big tip to increase survivability and also decrease the difficulty is to basically buff up your defense. You can do so by performing armor upgrades, which I highly recommend once you unlock the player village, and especially by heading over here at Yin Tiger. So basically every level, especially as you get closer to epic and then even legendary, is going to be massive, like 80 to 100% for one single level. Like you can see, defense jumping from 40 to 70 plus, and then from 70 to 110 plus, basically from one level to another. And the best part is that he also sells some of the resources that you need, like the silk, the cold iron leaves, and all of that, which you should also have quite a lot of by just going through the levels. But if you need some extra, you can buy a lot of them from his own shop. At number 7, another mistake that I've committed, which took me like half a game to even realize, is that enemies have random drops. Not even kidding, there are some strong pieces that dropped at some of them, so let me give you a few examples. One of them is the See No Evil helmet piece, which makes your perfect dodges a lot easier. This is something that actually drops from some of these monks right here at the temple area in chapter 3. So this is actually going to make your dodges that much easier if you're having difficulty with that. I discovered that this can help quite a bit, especially since a lot of them have really annoying to dodge attacks. Another one within the same area but from the 4-legged enemy are the Vajra arm guards. So this is going to moderately reduce the cooldown of your mysticism spells. So this includes, stuff like the Ring of Fire, also Immobilize. Basically, this is going to reduce the cooldown of Immobilize by 5 seconds, give or take. So that's going to be quite helpful if you want to just stack buffs that reduce that cooldown. I'm not completely sure if that also applies to the side bosses. Like for example, I got the Ginseng Cape from the Ginseng enemy that you can also have as a summon. So I'm not entirely sure if this is something that can trigger randomly or if it's a guaranteed drop, but I'm going to assume they are guaranteed drops. I don't think they would do this to us to have to refarm these on repeat in New Game Plus 2, 3, and 4, and 5 to basically have a chance at their full gear. At number 8, one of the toughest bosses in chapter 2 actually has a pretty interesting secret that makes it a walk in the park. So you can actually summon a second boss in the same boss arena, which is going to then just start a fight between them. I think that's really awesome. So the way you pull this off is by first finding all the 6 Buddha Eye from the Buddha Eye statues within the same area. So I'm going to attempt to show you how to pull this off because it's actually pretty easy. You just have to go to the Fright Cliff, and on your way to the next site of grace, which is going to be the one called Squall Hideout, you're going to already find your first one. So starting from the first, go back from the site of grace and immediately go ahead and collect the first set of eyes. From this point on, we're going to go left side of that shrine, keep it through one of these first caves, and then immediately jump to the left side, kind of circling back a little bit. You're going to again find an altar here with another pair of eyes you can collect. From this point on, the third set is going to be in the Crystal Rock boss room that you also need for the Man in Stone questline. So simply follow my steps, and once you're in the bigger room, you're going to take again that path to the left. Once you are in the room with the boss, take a look to your right side. You're going to see a small balcony with another pair of eyes you can go ahead and collect. From this point on, you can head over back, and instead of going through the cave, we're going to go immediately to the first left side exit that we see, which is going to bring us to another Seeker Shrine right here at the Rock Rest Flat. Once you get it, we need 3 more, so head over a little bit back towards the Man in Stone. You're going to just follow this straight narrow path, and you're going to immediately find another skull right here to your right side, just as you're going towards the canyon with the Man in Stone. Meanwhile, the 5th one is going to be at the top of the scaffolding with these annoying ranged enemies. So simply go over there using some of these stairs, maybe even go into the cloud form and try to avoid them to collect the 5th pair of eyes. From here, we can head over back to the Rock Rest Flat and then just head over to the boss arena to the left side. On the way over there, you're going to notice that there's a final head statue with the final Buddha eyeball that you can collect. And once you reach here, before you actually go into the middle of the arena, pay attention to your left side and just interact with this rock formation, giving it all of those 6 eyes. This is then going to summon the new boss, which is going to immediately also summon the second one, and they will immediately start the brawl. Now, pay attention because they also do some AoE, so keep back. Maybe even intervene with a few immobilizes to try and kinda have them balanced out. The one that you summoned is going to be much stronger, so try to immobilize that one so that the first can take as much of its HP as possible, because he's going to eventually get one-shotted otherwise. So this way you can actually just destroy both of the bosses at the same time, or at least take a huge chunk of the second one and get all of those bonuses right there. Now, there are a couple of extra tips that I have for you. One of them is to always pay attention to the shops, especially ones at Seeker Shrines. They will actually evolve as you progress in the game, or better yet, as you progress into the maps, because the shrines from follow-up maps will always have better and better quality items to sell. So especially so many of these crafting components, you will see those specific to the region you're in starting to being sold, but you can also find some of the other items, consumables. And also pay attention to your other NPC companions, especially Shen Monkey. As you progress in the game, he's going to start selling higher and higher grade flasks that can go all the way up to mythical quality, have even more slots for soaks and drinks, and get even better effects if you didn't find any better options in the open world. Another bonus tip is to go ahead and literally collect every plant you see. Don't make the mistake of just overlooking them, because they also have a chance to drop their seeds, and then you can bring those seeds to Shenlong back at the player village, and he's going to start planting them and give all the products to you every now and then. So you can get like 8 of each of the plants every few hours of play, which is really nice because you don't have to do any collecting. And like we said before, some of the mortal medicine is very strong and much needed in this game. And finally, the last tip slash mistake is to not avoid any of the secret areas, specifically because a lot of them hold items, key items that will make the end bosses of those chapters that much easier. So for example, the first boss chapter, the big bear boss, can be made much easier if you already have unlocked that fireproof mantle. That's going to pretty much nullify any fire damage during that, but you will need to have unlocked the secret temple area. The other one in chapter 2, the wind boss, you can pretty much bring down to its knees with the wind tamer that you get from the kingdom of Sahali as you unlock it from the boar questline. Not only is this going to completely nullify all of the tornado effects during that boss fight, it also gives you a massive damage reduction, and I would even say that this is one of the best items in the game. In the later stages, when you absolutely get smashed by damage, this can help a ton with that. plus it also interrupts enemies. And there are many other such examples in almost every chapter to make the end boss over there a lot easier. And that pretty much covers today's video. Let me know down below if there's anything I missed or any other mistakes that you caught yourself doing but eventually corrected. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time,